Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening from. Welcome to the Change Management Simplified podcast, where we will explain and discuss what change management is really about, using real examples alongside principles of change management based on our experiences on projects, transformations, change initiatives, and of course, the home experiences as well. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Change Management Simplified podcast. And again, I'm not going to stop saying thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for following. Please continue to do so. Let's grow our base and let's share these stories, experiences, so that others can learn from the pitfalls. But at the end of the day, the objective of the episode is to nurture and grow better leaders, but also be able to cope and navigate through change that we constantly have to go through in the current world, both in our personal lives, but also in the business world as well, or work. Now, today's episode is episode 23023, and it's going to take a different approach. To your surprise, I know some of you have said to me I'm a little bit harsh onto the leaders in some of the episodes. However, I am harsh for a reason, and that's because we have to continuously grow new leaders. It's an evolution, but also it's important that we have better leaders from what we have, because change is inevitable. We're constantly going through change, controllable change and uncontrollable change, both in our personal lives, but also in our workplaces, in business. So it's important for us to be able to lead through any change that we might encounter. But we need better leaders to do this, to make sure we effectively achieve the objective or get through it successfully in our personal lives. So, in today's episode, I am going to talk about leaders. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about leaders who have inspired or created inspiration via change management triggers based on my experience. So, these are leaders who have worked with or encountered or have said something that's resonated with me from a change management perspective, from a people perspective, that's now also dictated how I've gone on to work with other leaders or sponsors on change management or change initiatives. So the episode is all about successful and effective leaders that value change management. But as part one of this two-part episode, we are just going to focus on leaders that have inspired through change management triggers that they didn't realize they were doing for me. And also at that point, I didn't realize, but it stayed with me and I've carried that forward to this date several years down. And then in part two of the part two episode, we will focus with real examples with leaders, and I am going to name leaders who have done really well, effectively, and have been successful in, that I have worked with and have contributed to the success by valuing change management. And I'll give you real examples that I have used or have happened to me that they have done with that realization. Also with realization as well, they have contributed to the success of the project that we might be working on or they might be sponsoring, but just by valuing change management and the people aspect side of it. So got some interesting stories to share there or examples. So we will do that as part two for next week. But as of today, we are going to start with inspirational leaders with CM meaning change management triggers. Now, the first one I'm going to give credit to that gave me the trigger, but also instigated me recording this episode, because I do give, as I mentioned, leaders a hard time, is Andreas Berger. Now, he's the new group CEO for Swiss Re. He was previously CEO for Swiss Re Corporate Solutions, but now he's the group overall global CEO for Swiss Re. In one of his recent speeches that he was giving, one of the last sentences that he made um, was that people are the core to everything that we do, internally and externally. And we always have to remember that we keep the working environment as positive as possible, but also be better leaders in a way. By the way, he didn't use this exact words, so I am just summarizing from my takeaway from this speech. But the actual the last few words that he made were that most people leave a job because of a bad boss and not because of a company. And that is a true statement. Some of you might think, oh, that's cliche. Oh, God, no, it's not cliche. That is a fact. That is true. Most of us will leave our jobs because our boss is just not very nice. They're disrespectful. You don't get recognition. And they take credit and they never back you up when they need to. So you feel undervalued, and also you don't feel respected. So, what's the point of working for someone if you don't feel valued, if you don't feel like you're contributing to the success of the team, the company, but also, them as a leader. So you end up leaving. So it's not a cliche. Actually, at least 70% of people, based on research out there, have left their jobs um, because of a bad boss. Some of us, I know several other people who've left their jobs without having another job to go to, just to get away from their bad boss and just have that mental well-being because they became exhausted working for such individuals. Now, I partially covered this topic in detail, and you can go back and listen to it in the episode where we discussed bad leaders, habits of a bad leader. That was, I don't remember the episode, but you can go back and have a look at it. So that's Andreas Berger. Thank you. It was refreshing hearing such a statement from such a very, very senior leader, but it also gives me even more comfort, more confidence to my statements that I've always said, that actually the top people at that triangle, the senior leaders, do value change management, do know what change management is about, do know what impacts positively people's performance, and therefore they try and create that environment at the top. Where my biggest challenge with leaders is the layer below that. We'll talk about that as separate point. My other inspirational leader with the CM trigger is Steve Varley. Steve Varley was the global partner for EY a few years ago, and now he has, I believe, changed roles. But he's He's been very successful, and in my early days in my career, I was working with Steve and his team as a project accountant or financial management associate. And I was in charge of the working capital cycle for the business advisory group. And we got to a point where I had done everything that I could do, and I wasn't getting traction from the fellow partners and directors to help us meet our targets. So I happened to meet Steve in the lift randomly. I was coming from another meeting, he was coming from another, and we met in the lift. And I thought, what do I do? And somehow I got the courage, and I turned around to Steve. I said to Steve, I need your help. He goes, oh, hi, Rachel. At that point, I thought, oh, Steve knows my name. He goes, yeah. I'm like, of course I know your name. I was like, do you know the progress emails that I send out? I need your help on that. Unfortunately, we're not making a lot of progress, and I just need you to help me do something. Um, and we agreed. We had a I had a quick strategy in mind, and I laid it out. And I said to him, I'm going to send out, this week's email. I just need you to just send a follow-up, just a short sentence, even if it's just a few words that are encouraging, but they're more or less going to be nudging to the partners, the fellow partners and directors. And We did that. Came out, I went and drafted my usual email, did that. After sending it out, within 5 minutes of me sending out the email, Steve sent a follow-up email on that. Believe me, that response from Steve Varley created miracles. Miracles to the point that by the time I left after 5 years at EY, our business units was the best performing business unit with their working capital cycle. However, what he did was highlight the fact, what his email did or response did was highlight that this is a common objective for us all. It's not just Rachel's objective, it's not just Steve himself's objective, it's a collective objective that we all have to meet for the business units. Otherwise, we all have personal um, impact on it, which is basically you won't get your bonus as expected. What this email told me, or what Steve told me, was to deploy senior stakeholders in charge of, maybe the or sponsoring the program or the initiative, is to deploy their influence and power at the right time. That is a lesson that I've learned away and took away with me throughout my career. And Steve doesn't probably realize it did that, but it's for me it's still wonderful to apply. I still use it even with my senior, my current senior stakeholders. However, I only approach them when I need to. I don't often go into my senior stakeholders, offices, but when I do, it means I've tried everything and now I need your help. So I strategically deploy the power and influence when I've really got to a point where I'm not getting anywhere, but when I've tried everything. My next inspirational CM trigger is Okobea Anwti-Boasiako. This lady, she has no idea how much she's contributed to my change management aspirations, my accomplishments. She taught me how to work and strengthen my senior stakeholder engagement and management to the next level. I was, I was doing okay. I was fine with it, before I started working with her. But when I worked with her, I saw how she managed her stakeholders. Each stakeholder is different, especially the senior ones. But she told me that you would usually have a max 10 minutes, at max, best scenario, 15 minutes with a CFO, a CEO. So you need to be clear, precise about what you need from them. Tell them what the situation is, what you've done, what you need from them. Give them the information they need, the firing power for you to give them backup. But also you need to understand what the problem is, what we're trying to change. So you need to believe in that change and come up with strategies that enable you and your boss, the senior stakeholder, to gain success. The other aspect she told me was every stakeholder is important and therefore treat them locally. Sorry, not locally, treat them equally, regardless of grade or level. They're all important. And I saw this lady work the room, but work with these various stakeholders, and I learned so much from her. But what I took away from was the fact that she spent time understanding why we're doing this change. Why is it important to the business? How does it impact those different stakeholders that she had to engage? Because within the chief of staff office, or the CFO chief of staff office, several projects came along our way, and we had to work with all the direct reports, the heads of different finance functions and actuarial, and risk and compliance, to try and get them to success. Okobea, I salute you. Thank you. To this day, my stakeholder management and engagement, you'll be very impressed. I keep up with it, but I also understand why I have to do that. And on that note, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Um, for next week, we are going to look at, in part two, the leaders who sponsored a change initiative, um, and I felt valued change management, and therefore contributed to the success of the project that I was working with them. as I mentioned, sometimes they don't realize what they're doing because it's natural, but sometimes they do, but they apply it effectively, and it made my job that little bit easier with their expertise, but also with their influence and with just their natural value for change management. And on that note, see you next week and speak soon. Don't forget to subscribe and follow, by the way. Much appreciate your time and effort that you create to listen to me. Thank you. Bye bye. If you find this podcast beneficial or interesting, please press follow, like, or subscribe. Lastly, and of course, don't forget to spread the word by sharing. Thank you for listening.